Tall.
And I'm Small.
And today we're doing Khan Academy's MCAT Prep Biomolecules section, Endocrine System Questions 2? I don't know where the first one went, but we're doing questions 2 because it's the only one that's there. All right, first question. The primary role of the parathyroid gland is to receive hormonal signals from the hypothalamus, to regulate serum calcium levels, to maintain metabolic homeostasis, to send hormonal signals to other endocrine organs. People. People. You see parathyroid, you're just thinking calcium that whole time. Literally every time that you see parathyroid gland, they're only going to have one answer that has to do with calcium, and it's the right answer. The parathyroid gland's job is to regulate serum calcium levels by releasing parathyroid hormone. Don't think about it in terms of like parathyroid has to do with thyroid. It just means that it's next to it. But parathyroid gland regulates serum calcium levels. I'm very passionate about the parathyroid gland as well.
Yes, Tall taught me that.
So when you see parathyroid, think calcium. If you have two calcium answers, yeah, you're screwed, but it's okay.
No, you can reason it out.
You might be able to reason it out. Question number 2. Antibodies directed against pancreatic cells result in these cells' destruction. What laboratory abnormality might be seen in this scenario? Elevated serum calcium, depressed serum sodium, elevated serum glucose. So we're talking about pancreatic cells. I don't think serum calcium is going to be affected. Once again, parathyroid gland. Depressed serum sodium. I don't think the pancreas has anything to do with that, but we know it's got a lot to do with glucose.
Mm-hmm.
But before we actually click it, let's make sure in our mind that we know this. So we're destroying pancreatic cells.
Mm-hmm.
Pancreatic cells produce insulin.
Yep.
Insulin would lower serum glucose,
By
shuttling glucose into the cells.
or telling them they need to, right?
Right. Facilitating the transport of glucose into
Exactly.
cells. So that would make total sense that if you don't have a pancreas, you're not going to be able to get the glucose from your blood into cells. And it was the correct answer. Very cool. Next question. Each hormone's organ specificity is determined by the signaling cascade it initiates, whether it is lipophilic or lipophobic, its ability to interact with a specific receptor, or whether or not it is a corticosteroid or a gonadotropic hormone. Okay, so the signaling cascade it initiates, no, that's not correct because a lot of them initiate like the same signaling cascade. Whether it's lipophilic or lipophobic, that just means is it like peptide or steroid origin. Corticosteroid or gonadotropic hormone, that's really specific. But the ability to interact with a specific receptor. That sounds good to me. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think it can cross like the outer cell membrane, but it will not affect transcription, which is what I'm thinking about steroid hormones specifically,
Yes.
but I think it's an okay one to stick with for right now to think about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you're releasing a steroid hormone all over the body.
Right, so it can come into almost all of the cells,
Mm-hmm.
but it will only come into the nucleus and affect transcription if I have the specific receptor for it in that cell.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would totally say its ability to interact with a specific receptor, and we got it. Very cool. All right, hormones secreted by the hypothalamus would be classified as endocrine, intracrine, paracrine, autocrine. Okay, so hypothalamus, that does not enter the blood. It's like the infundibulum, right?
That's a word I've never heard before.
Okay, so the infundibulum is either like the bone around it, or it is the actual passage that goes from the hypothalamus to the pituitary.
That is the hypophyseal. No,
Oh, hypophyseal portal.
Portal, yeah, one of those things.
But I don't think it's blood. I think it's just.
Yeah, no. So it talks to one of them with electrical signals, and then it literally sends. It has its own network. But you're right. I don't know if it's blood or not.
I'm pretty sure the hypothalamus moves its releasing hormones it moves them to the pituitary, not through blood. And the reason I'm stressing not through blood is because as soon as you have hormones going into the blood and then going somewhere else to enact their action, that's endocrine. That's the definition of endocrine.
Okay, so is it the hypophyseal portal system? Is that the right term for it?
That is a thing.
Is that the one? There's like one that sounds like that near the liver, right?
I was just about to say that sounds like it might be in the liver.
Yeah, I'm not familiar enough with these things to get them right, obviously.
But a hypophyseal portal vein is something.
Oh, you're
I
right.
know,
That sounds like... Okay.
I know that the infundibulum is like the channel. I don't know if it's the bone around the actual portal.
I think it's the bone because I haven't heard of it before. But that is a very fun word.
It is, infundibulum.
Okay.
So if we're not doing endocrine, it's not autocrine because the hypothalamus isn't acting on itself.
Right.
Intracrine, I don't even know what that means, but paracrine, if paracrine means you're releasing hormones and they're just they're not going through the blood, but they're acting on other cells, organs, tissues that are near you. So I would say paracrine, and we got it right. Okay. Let's look and see if they tell me exactly what the thing is. So autocrine signaling occurs when an organ secretes a hormone and acts on its same organ. Okay, yeah, we know that. Endocrine involves the hormone traveling to a distant target. And paracrine signaling, in contrast, means that the hormone... Okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay, remember that the hypothalamic hormones primarily act in the pituitary. Therefore, this should be classified as paracrine signaling. Okay, so they didn't tell us what that portal is called. But I think the infundibulum is there, and it's a portal. So it's paracrine because it's nearby.
Infundibulum.
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 So it fun's right in the word.
Oh my goodness.
It's a very fun word.
What a blast.
Okay, question number 5. All of the following are true of the posterior pituitary hormones except they include antidiuretic hormone and oxytocin. They include direct andtropic hormones. They are synthesized in the posterior pituitary, or a nerve signal from the hypothalamus stimulates their release. Okay, so we need to find which one is false. So antidiuretic hormone and oxytocin, I'm pretty sure those are them. Those are the hormones that are produced in the posterior pituitary. Running off of that, I did say they were produced. I'm pretty sure they are synthesized there in the posterior pituitary. Direct andtropic. Do you remember what tropic hormones means?
Nope, and I have totally forgotten, which one is connected via the electric signals and which ones are with that portal system. So I would be totally lost in this question.
Okay, it's up to Tall. Okay, a nerve signal from the hypothalamus stimulates their release. I'm going to say that. Okay, I'm going to say that because it's the anterior pituitary that gets all of the releasing hormones.
Okay.
But if we would think that the posterior pituitary would still be under some control of the central nervous system, then it wouldn't be the releasing hormones because the posterior pituitary is separate, but it could be an electrical signal. And you were saying that you remember an electrical signal being a part of it. So I'm going to say they include direct andtropic hormones. Okay, and that's it. But why? Okay, let's see. Yeah, so ADH and oxytocin are synthesized there. They become neurosecretory secretory vesicles that are released from the posterior pituitary via a nerve signal. So there you go. They're produced there, and they're released via a nerve signal. And these hormones do not include direct andtropic flat peg hormones.
Yeah, that's I've heard Brian and Ryan from the Next Step podcast talking about this. It's their little mnemonic for all of those produced in the anterior.
Oh, I see.
In the posterior, I do remember this now. Physiology was a couple of semesters ago. But I remember remembering this by posterior was like a post office in which other people's mail, or that handled its own mail. But,
okay.
Somebody important could call up the post office and get their mail directed to other places. Okay. So the hypothalamus could direct the post office with a call.
Okay.
Through electrical signals. But the autocrine,
autocrine?
Nope, I'm mixing things up. Never mind.
Okay, well, they say direct andtropic flat peg meaning the ones that are released from the anterior pituitary. Tropic hormones. Gosh, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Direct andtropic.
Like gonadotropic,
Yeah.
but I don't remember what that root means.
I can't think of the difference, and Khan Academy isn't giving me any more hints, so I guess next question.
We've got some videos to watch.
Yes, we do. The concentration of hormones in the bloodstream is regulated by production of receptor antagonists, indirect growth promoting effects, nutritional signals to the endocrine gland, or positive and negative feedback loops. Okay, so they're talking about concentration of hormones in the bloodstream, which means after they've been released by the pituitary gland. So production of receptor antagonists, that's not going to do it. If anything, that might increase your concentration. But that's not regulating the concentration. Indirect growth promoting effects, I don't know what that means. Nutritional signals to the endocrine gland, maybe. Positive and negative feedback loops. That one sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, I'm thinking just like when a woman is giving birth and the head starts to crown and stretch those literal stretch receptors.
Right.
There's already some oxytocin, but that stretching signals the hypothalamus to be like, oh, let's make more oxytocin. Let's get this process out. Positive feedback loop. Pop, baby.
Get this process out.
Yeah.
That's all a baby is to you.
Yeah. The just most wonderful thing that we can produce in life ever.
The most wonderful process we can ever produce. That's what we need to remember.
Yeah, it is a process. They're a piece of work.
Alrighty. Next question. Unlike polypeptide hormones, steroid hormones demonstrate rapid onset of effect, are more rapidly degraded, and therefore demonstrate more temporary effects, more commonly function via specific secondary messengers, or are more likely to have an associated receptor in the cytosol or nucleus. Okay, so steroid hormones. So polypeptide hormones, polar, they're not going to go past the cell membrane. And they're normally going to hit like a GPCR. It's going to send out a cyclic AMP cascade, and then all of the PKs or whatever.
Yep.
I
don't
calcium.
necessarily know that they would be polar, but you're right. It would be large, right? Proteins are huge.
Yeah.
So you're right. They would hit some receptor on the outside.
But if you have steroid hormones, they make it through that outer membrane, and they normally make it to the nucleus or someplace in the cytosol. Therefore, that should be our answer.
Yeah, and they should have receptors in there too, right? Because they should have some protein that carries them around in the blood because they're not soluble.
Right.
And that's why they can easily traverse the outer membrane, the outer cell membrane, and then the cytosol would again be a hydrophilic kind of environment. So we would need some receptor there, and then we totally need a receptor in the nucleus where it can attach and then affect transcription at the DNA.
Awesome. Yeah. So important to remember the big difference between those two types of hormones. Next question. The role of adenylate cyclase is to... Ooh, I remember this because I learned everything about GPCRs. Okay, so adenylate cyclase. Cyclize AMP in order to generate secondary messengers. Aid in signal amplification via conversion of GTP to GDP. Activate G protein coupled receptors via phosphorylation. Or degrade steroid hormones, terminating their function. What you got?
Okay, so I don't remember this at all.
Okay.
I know that it's in GPCR stuff, but I don't remember its role.
Okay. Reason through it.
Yeah. So to degrade steroid hormones, I think that it's not involved in steroid hormone stuff. It's a G protein coupled receptors. So probably a protein derivative hormone that's doing the activating.
Definitely.
To aid in signal amplification, maybe, but via conversion of GTP to GDP, well, no, because I think GTP has that intrinsic GTP hydrolase activity, so it will hydrolyze itself and turn off when it turns into GDP. To activate G protein coupled receptors via phosphorylation, I don't think so. I think it's farther down in the pathway.
It is.
I think after something turns on the GPCR, like a series of events happens, and then adenylate cyclase is turned on. So that leaves me to make CAMP in order to generate second messengers.
And that is the correct answer.
Okay.
So I think, so with GPCRs, basically what people need to remember is, let me see if I remember this totally. So the GPCR has the alpha, beta, and gamma subunits on the cytosolic side.
Yep.
And when the receptor for the GPCR is triggered, it will cause the alpha subunit that's on the inside of the GPCR has a GDP always attached to it. And when the GPCR is turned on by its ligand, then the GDP turns into a GTP, and that alpha subunit breaks away from the beta gamma subunit and goes over to adenylate cyclase to turn it on, which, as you said, will cyclize AMP, and then that creates the secondary messenger cascade. So that's the process for GPCRs, and yes, adenylate cyclase is the enzyme that cyclizes AMP.
That it makes sense. I should have just listened to the. We were really good at naming enzymes to share what they do, like down to the whole dehydrogenase and the order at which you put the two reactants. Except for catalase, we seem to have done a good job.
Yeah.
I should just listen to names.
Okay, question number 9. Biosynthesis of steroids begins with binding a pyrophosphate to a terpene, generation of a sterol, methylation of a sesquiterpene, or binding of two terpene groups. I don't totally remember terpenes. It's probably something that I should remember, and it's something good that we should go over, especially because on an MCAT practice that we did recently, we had something about terpenes on it. But biosynthesis of steroids begins with phosphate to a terpene, methylation of a sesquiterpene. I mean, generation of a sterol. I don't even remember what a sterol is now that I think about it.
Yeah, I think so. Cholesterol, I think, is a type of sterol, and I know that you make steroids from cholesterol.
Mm-hmm.
So then I think back to cholesterol synthesis, which I also don't remember very well, and it does involve terpenes. And the hint literally just says, "This question really just requires recall of the steps of steroid biosynthesis." Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna say it's methylation of a sesquiterpene because it took me a while to say sesquiterpene. 1, 2, 3. And it's not right. The actual correct answer is binding of a pyrophosphate to a terpene. So generation of sterols occurs further along the steroid synthesis pathway. The biosynthesis of steroids begins with adding a pyrophosphate to a terpene. Okay, so another one of those biochemical pathways is 20 to 30 of them that you just need to know for the MCAT. There's not really a good way around it. And this would probably be one of them, although I would bet this is a low yield question on the MCAT.
Yeah, I was going to say this seems uber specific.
Yeah, but it's good to know. And it's good to understand the basics because terpenes will probably show up on someone's MCAT.
Yeah. Isn't it the one from OChem, or some of the ones from OChem, that smell really strongly? Like we get them from a plant?
Yes.
Like a shrub?
Yes, terpenes, I think.
Like turpentine?
Ooh, is that how you spell turpentine?
I don't know.
I heard about turpentine in a song one time, but that's it.
Okay, you're so helpful.
Okay, last question, folks. Steroid hormones include which of the following? Pancreatic and thyroid hormones and adrenal cortical hormones, sex hormones and adrenal cortical hormones, or sex hormones and adrenal medullary hormones. Okay, thyroid, no, it gets released into the bloodstream. Pancreas, so thyroid again, so you can immediately rule out the first two answer choices. We have sex hormones, definitely steroid hormones.
Yep.
Trick is adrenal cortical hormones or adrenal medullary hormones.
Want to know how I got there?
You saw cortical and remembered the word corticosteroids?
Oh no, that would have been even simpler.
Because that's what I did.
You're gonna laugh at me.
Okay.
I remembered thinking cortisol, which I don't even know if it is made there, but cortisol made me think of cholesterol. And that's how I got there.
Well, I honestly couldn't say if cortisol is made in the cortical region of the adrenal glands or if it's made in the medullary region.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Because now that I think, I really don't know.
Yeah.
That's an important thing to remember.
But OL made me think cholesterol derivative.
Okay. So the adrenal medullary hormones isn't that like where
Adrenaline?
well, adrenaline's made somewhere. I don't know where exactly.
Yeah.
I was thinking aldosterone. Isn't aldosterone come from there?
See, I don't know. This is really my Achilles heel would be this kind of stuff, beta oxidation. Oh.
Yeah, so running through hormones is very important. Oh, we didn't even answer yet. I'm going to say sex hormones and adrenal cortical. Yay! Cortical steroids, people. That's a word you hear a lot, I think. I think corticosteroids actually includes cortisol because I know that my father, who's a physician, talks about corticosteroids all the time, and he deals with like stress, like reducing stress in his patients a lot, and he takes cortisol measurements, saliva tests. I remember him saying something like saliva test for corticosteroids. So
yeah,
and that's how you measure for cortisol.
And there's that whole debate on whether saliva test or a blood test would be more accurate for cortisol, just due to how non-soluble it is and stuff like blood. So yeah, it's a really good point.
All right, so sex hormones and adrenal cortical hormones. Let's look real quick at these hints to see if they do tell us something about our little issue with the adrenal glands. So it does say the adrenal medulla does not produce steroid hormones. We can kind of gather that, but it doesn't tell us what it does produce. All right, so know your hormone organs for sure.
Yeah, I think so. Making a chart would be really useful for things like the hormones, the major ones at least, don't go crazy with them, and neurotransmitters.
Yeah. So with hormones, you're looking at the hypothalamus, the anterior and posterior pituitaries. You're looking at the adrenal glands, which is the adrenal cortex and the adrenal medulla.
Parathyroid.
Your thyroid, your parathyroid, and your pancreas. I can't think of anything else that would be like a major player in that. So if you know those and you know what they control, what hormones they produce, if you've been through physiology, it should be pretty easy to look back at it, just study it for a bit and be reminded of all of it. And then know about what effects that they might have on different parts of the body.
Yep.
Awesome. Strong work, gang.